To the wide receivers, just like we kicked off yesterday, talking about that you should take a tight end.
Sure.
What is your overall approach to drafting wide receivers this year? Because the modern trend is basically everybody just loads up on them right out of the gate at this point.
Yeah, look, I think it's important to understand what your league settings are, and obviously for everything, but especially for wide receivers. How many wide receivers do you play? Are you in a 2 running back, 3 wide receiver league, or is it 2 and 2? Knowing the depth of the position and how many you can start, I think is important. Obviously, half point PPR versus standard, that has a big effect on the scoring of wide receivers as well. And I also think just if you can know sort of are you in a league that tends to get a little bit running back crazy? Do you have somebody that likes kind of the trendy young players, because we've got a lot of really trendy young wide receivers this year? Just understanding sort of where that's at. Look, of my top 10, I got 7 wide receivers. So I am wide receiver heavy in the first round. I think it's important in the first 2 rounds to have at least one elite wide receiver. But having said that if you decide you want to go running back, if you end up going, if you decide you want to go running back early, you want an elite running back, get one of the elite guys, because I will say that I like the wide receivers in the 3 to 5 round range more than the running backs that are going in the 3 to 5 round range.
Yep, I think that makes sense. I think the key as well with wide receivers at the top of the draft is, I believe the stat is wide receivers on average miss 1.0 games per season, and running backs miss 2.0 games per season. So just less attrition. At the top of your draft, you want to just not lose it straight away. And so just there's a higher floor for wide receivers, and it varies amongst these top guys, and we'll get into it. But certainly, I think in general, if you think 2 guys are neck and neck, top of the draft, you should defer to the receiver.
Over the years, there is usually less variance and more consistency among the elite wide receivers than there are the elite running backs.
Let's look at your top 10 here, Matthew, because we have to start by kicking off with some news. CeeDee Lamb, who is number 1, officially signs a 4-year, $136 million extension on Monday, $100 million guaranteed. So some feel good for your guy Eights.
Yeah, exactly. Well deserved for a friend of the podcast, friend of mine, CeeDee Lamb. I call him Eights. Everyone calls him Eights. There you go. Look at that. Absolutely right. He can be given away. He could, doesn't need to steal the phone anymore. He just, from his girlfriend, just, hey, there you go. Everyone, phone for everyone. CeeDee Lamb gets paid, well deserved. Happy to see that as well. By the way, and you know who drinks free today? Everyone that's drafted CeeDee Lamb, because you get bailed out. There you go.
Feeling real good now.
Drafters drink for free. He's my number 1 guy. 13 games last year with 15 or more fantasy points. No wide receiver in the NFL had more than that. Led all players with red zone targets last year. Led the NFL in receptions as well. And we think about what Dallas has done this year in the offseason, and the answer is nothing, right? I mean, it's his competition for targets is Jake Ferguson and Brandon Cooks.
Yep.
And then, Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. It is going to be all CeeDee Lamb all the time on what should be a pass-heavy offense.
Yep. And I think of these top 5 wide receivers, they all kind of have a little bit of a flaw.
Sure.
Except for CeeDee Lamb.
Correct.
Because Tyreek Hill is already dealing with injuries. He's been injured the past 2 seasons. He has a quarterback who seems to struggle in December all the time. Also plays in a division of really tough defenses. Jamar Chase just plays outside in the cold weather, again, in a tough divion of opposing defenses.
And there's contract questions. He's been practicing.
Yes.
He's come back to practice, but still, does he just say, I'm not playing until I get a deal? Who knows?
Suiting up is different.
It's different, right? So we don't know what's going on with his contract. And yes, he plays outdoors.
And then you look at Justin Jefferson, who I think has an argument to be number 2 or even number 1, but his quarterback is Sam Darnold. And these other guys have quarterbacks. With Justin Jefferson, it's become a math thing where it's how many yards does Sam Darnold have to throw for him to provide number 1 fantasy wide receiver value in terms of being number 1 on this list? Sam Darnold has to be over 4,000 yards passing if Justin Jefferson is going to do that. So that is the question with him. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, I kind of think doesn't have that many questions. He's probably the second, I would say he's the second highest floor guy after CeeDee Lamb.
Right, but the question about Amon-Ra St. Brown is he scored 10 touchdowns last year, but can he score 10 again? What's the touchdown equity for Amon-Ra St. Brown? By the way, we love his floor because he plays indoors for so many of his games, 14 of the 17 games for Amon-Ra St. Brown. But a couple of those games, of the 3 outdoor games the Lions play, 2 of them come in the fantasy playoffs. And so are you hey, I'm going to ride Amon-Ra into the playoffs, and then when I need him the most, that's hard to say. second year of Sam Laporta as well. Does he take some of those red zone looks? Does he suddenly become much more of a touchdown threat? So, again, Amon-Ra St. Brown is my ride or die from last year. I love the Sun God. I agree with you. I think he's very safe. To me, that's the sort of the tier. I think you could make an argument. You could make an argument to include A.J. Brown and Garrett Wilson in that tier. But again, as we get into sort of questions, Jay, to your point, like A.J. Brown was awesome last year. But there were a couple of games where he just suddenly disappeared. And again, they have Devontae Smith and they add Saquon Barkley, who you know is going to demand a lot more touches than what they had last year. Goddard should be healthy for the full year. Just does A.J. Brown have the same kind of year, or is he just going to be like an upper tier wide receiver? Is this the year that A.J. Brown makes that leap into elite wide receiver 1, or is he just going to stay where he's sort of been the last 2 years, which is like really high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1? You know, but I don't know that you can put him in the same tier as a Lamb, as a Hill, as a Jefferson. And then on Garrett Wilson, like, we love the talent. We believe in the talent. We believe in the target share, but he's got a 40-year-old quarterback.
Yeah, he needs
in
touchdowns.
a tough division, right?
Yeah, he needs touchdowns. Like, 3 and 4 touchdown seasons. That's got to crank up to 8 to 10 if you want to be with the big dogs in this group. Now, Tyrod Taylor being the backup, he's a guy that can support a number 1 wide receiver, so that makes you feel a little better. But just the reality is for Garrett Wilson, we're talking about going from being an 1,100-ish 3-touchdown player to a 1,500-yard-ish 10-touchdown player, which I think he could do. But once again, you want to see it.
Yep. And also, like, among all these elite guys where the margins are so thin between them, the things that I always kind of defer back to is, do you play in a dome? Like, a dome is such a big advantage, and that's where CeeDee Lamb, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, they separate themselves there. Do you have quarterback stability? And CeeDee, again, he ticks that box in the biggest way possible, as does Jared Goff supporting Amon-Ra, Chase, Tua, and that's the question about Darnold. And also, it is a little bit of a question with Garrett Wilson, just because of the health concerns with Rodgers, and he's 40 years old and we haven't seen him out there. And then the other thing that I really like is, do you just play in the slot a little bit more? Because the slot is such a cheat code for PPR,
100%.
And that's how Cooper Kupp was able to deliver his 2021 season, and that's a real benefit for Amon-Ra. They've used CeeDee Lamb more in the slot as well in Dallas.
So, Matthew, you talked about how the tier can kind of start to separate maybe after Garrett Wilson, depending how you evaluate him. So then tier 2 starts with Puka Nacua at 8?
Yeah, it does. So Garrett Wilson, like, to me, I feel like if I leave the first round, especially in a 12-team league, if I leave the first round with any one of those 7 wide receivers, I'm feeling good, along with, obviously, McCaffrey, Bijan, or Brees, right? Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.